Last Sunday, I was supposed to pick up my mom from my grandparents' place. My dad was out of town, and since my mom doesn't drive, I had to make the 100-kilometer trip. Now, I don't trust my old clunker for long trips, so I decided to take my dad's car. Since I wouldn't be using mine, I thought it'd be nice to let my girlfriend borrow it for shopping and errands while I was gone. Sunday morning, we woke up early. We lived together, so we hopped in my car, and I drove us to my parents' place to swap vehicles. I left in my dad's car, and my girlfriend took mine. I hadn't even made it out of the city when my phone rang. It was my girlfriend, asking me to come back because she'd been in an accident. I turned around and headed back, finding her at the end of our street. She'd managed to hit not one, but two parked cars while making a right turn. I tried my best not to laugh, but come on, hitting parked cars, that's a special kind of talent. I talked to the car owners and offered to pay for everything, since it was clearly my girlfriend's fault. I didn't want to waste time with the police. It usually takes 3 to 6 hours at the accidents department, so I offered to fill out an amiable form. It's something we have in my country where both parties can settle minor accidents without involving the police. Since it was Sunday and insurance offices were closed, I couldn't get the form right away. I let them photograph my insurance, exchange numbers, and promised to sort everything out the next day. Then I left for my grandparents' place. On the way, I called a friend who works in insurance. He emailed me a form and recommended a service station that could fix their cars quickly. I called the car owners and told them I'd be back in a few hours with the form to settle everything. That's when one of them got all high and mighty. One of the car owners declared that he felt entitled to go to the police and informed me that they would be waiting there if I decided to come. I was trying to be decent and fix the problem quickly, and this guy wanted to waste hours of everyone's Sunday because he felt entitled? Fine, I thought. Two can play that game. Now I should mention that I have a master's degree in law and have been working at law firms for over 5 years. I know the laws better than most cops. So I decided to use that knowledge. When I got back from my grandparents, I called the guys and asked them to grab an extra form for me at the police station. They claimed they couldn't because there was only one per person, which I knew was nonsense. I arrived at the station after they'd been waiting for 2 to 3 hours. They had numbers 56 and 57, and I got 89. Each case takes about 20–30 minutes, so they were in for a long wait. When their numbers were called, I followed them into the office. I informed the officer that I was also part of the incident, explaining it was a 3-way accident and inquiring if I should be present during the discussion with the other 2 parties. The cop told the guys to leave and come back when all 3 of us had filled out our reports. They had to wait another 30 minutes for my girlfriend to finish her report before we could all go in together. That's when we met the most incompetent police officer I've ever seen. Get this. One of the guys didn't even have a driver's license because it was his mom's car and his girlfriend filled out the report. The other guy had a license but was filing for his parents' car. Neither of them was legally allowed to file the report. The cop found my girlfriend guilty, which, to be fair, she was, and started the paperwork. That's when I spoke up. I asked the officer if he knew the parking regulations for the street where the incident happened. When he admitted he didn't, I questioned whether he thought that information was relevant to the case. He mumbled some gibberish and then accused me of disliking cops. I responded by stating that I disliked incompetent individuals in any profession. In the end, he had his way because he was the authority. He ticketed my girlfriend and gave the guys copies of my insurance to get their cars fixed. The cop didn't even take pictures of the damaged cars, which is mandatory by law. He had zero evidence an accident ever happened, apart from the other guy's words. That's when I decided to fight back. As soon as I got home, I did what society and my profession taught me. I sued him. I filed the lawsuit on Monday and got a court date in 4 months. The truth is, my girlfriend was at fault. If they had just taken my original offer, their cars would have been fixed by Tuesday. But no, they had to be entitled and go to the police. Here's the best part. The parking regulations on that street clearly state that cars should be parked parallel to the sidewalk, not perpendicular. The neighbors had made their own convention to park perpendicular and fit more cars, but that doesn't fly when the police get involved. Now, thanks to a law that suspends any item under litigation, they can't fix their cars until the judge gives a verdict. I'm planning to drag this out for 4 or 5 years. In the end, not only will I not be paying for their repairs, but they'll be paying for mine. My main argument? The causality link. Yes, my girlfriend caused an accident, but it was caused by their illegal parking. If they had parked legally, there would have been more room and their cars wouldn't have been hit. Period. I'm an engineer by trade, specializing in oil rig maintenance. My wife and I have been married for 15 years, and we have 2 kids and 3 dogs, a beagle and 2 German shepherds. We live in a quiet suburb, or at least it used to be quiet until about a year ago. I had just returned from an 8-month stint in Canada, working on a particularly challenging project. While I was away, my wife kept me updated on the neighborhood gossip. The most interesting tidbit was her suspicion that our new neighbors were dealing drugs. Now, I'm not one to jump to conclusions, but my wife's instincts are usually spot on. As soon as I got back, I decided to take some precautions. I've always been a bit of a tech enthusiast, so I installed security cameras around our property. Most of our neighbors were cool with it. Some even asked for advice on setting up their own systems. But our new neighbors, they weren't happy at all. One morning, as I was heading to my car, the guy from next door confronted me. Let's call him DDN for drug dealing neighbor. He angrily demanded that I take down the cameras using some choice words. He said he didn't want anyone knowing his business. I calmly refused, explaining that the cameras were only watching my property and couldn't see into his yard. DDN got even angrier, cursing at me and threatening to take the cameras down himself. I warned him that if he ever came onto my property, he'd leave in a body bag. That interaction confirmed my wife's suspicions. I started paying closer attention to the camera feeds. Sure enough, there was a lot of suspicious activity, especially around 3 a.m. Cars would pull up in front of my driveway, DDN would meet them, they'd exchange something, and then the cars would leave. One night, things escalated. I got a motion alert on 2 of my cameras and my dog started going crazy. I saw my front door handle move. I grabbed my shotgun and rushed to the door, but my beagle tried to bolt outside howling at the intruders. I couldn't manage the dog and the shotgun at the same time, so I yelled at the 2 men standing there to get off my property. That night, my motorcycle was stolen and every ground floor camera was damaged. The footage showed DDN walking up to them and hitting them. I was done being passive. I called the police, but even with the security footage, they claimed there was nothing they could do. I was furious. I had proof, I knew who did it, but I was powerless. Or so I thought. For the next few days, I buried myself in municipal and building codes. I started reporting every single violation I could find on DDN's property. Broken down cars in the yard, violation, broken gutters, violation, barking dogs after 10 p.m., you guessed it, violation. I even got creative. I put tainted gas in a can on the back of my Jeep, which was predictably stolen. The next night, their dirt bike engine conveniently blew up. DDN confronted me again, this time threatening my dogs and my wife if the complaints didn't stop. I told him to back off, reminding him that he had already stolen from me and damaged my property. I asked if he really wanted to add threats to the list. DDN responded by warning me that I didn't know who I was messing with. He claimed to have connections and threatened the safety of my family if I kept up with the complaints. I countered by telling him that he didn't know who he was threatening either, and that I had more than just cameras watching my back. The encounter ended with both of us drawing weapons before retreating to our homes. But I had one last ace up my sleeve. Remember all that security footage of DDN's late-night visitors? I compiled everything. License plate numbers, car models, colors, times, dates, and sent it all to the Counter-Narcotics Division. It was enough for a search warrant, and boy, did they make use of it. I watched on my cameras as SWAT descended on DDN's house. DDN and his cronies were let out in handcuffs, looking shocked and angry. Later, I found out the full extent of what they'd uncovered. Not only were they dealing drugs, but they were also involved in dogfighting. Those dogs I'd complained about? They were being used as bait dogs. The police also found a small arsenal of illegal weapons. The charges were so severe that DDN and his gang won't see the outside of a prison cell for decades. Me and my family, we're sleeping a lot easier these days. Sometimes being a nosy neighbor with a penchant for technology pays off. My family was middle class and we were comfortable enough. When I turned 18, everything changed. My dad lost his job and my mom got sick. Suddenly, our savings were drained, and I had to figure out how to pay for college on my own. I worked my butt off to get scholarships, but they only covered so much. To make ends meet, I took on a part-time job at a local diner and found the cheapest housing option available, a rundown house shared with 5 other students who were just as broke as me. The house was a mess, with peeling wallpaper and creaky floorboards, but it was all we could afford. We had one tiny kitchen with a single refrigerator that we all shared. It wasn't ideal, but we made it work. Or at least, I thought we did. My budget was so tight that I could barely afford food, let alone luxuries like soda or juice. So, I came up with a solution. A big jug of water that I'd keep in the fridge. When I could spare a few coins, I'd throw in some lemon or lime slices to give it a bit of flavor. It wasn't much, but it was something to look forward to after a long day of classes and work. At first, I didn't mind if my housemates had some of my water. I figured we were all in the same boat and a little sharing wouldn't hurt. But then I started noticing that the jug would be empty more often than not when I got home. I'd fill it up only to find it drained again the next day. It was frustrating, but I tried to brush it off. Then came the day that pushed me over the edge. I walked into the kitchen, exhausted after a double shift at the diner, craving a cool drink of my lemon water. And there was my roommate, drinking straight from the jug like it was his personal water fountain. I yelled at him, asking what he thought he was doing. He just shrugged and said he was getting a drink. I told him it was my water jug and that he should show some respect by using a glass, or better yet, get his own jug. He rolled his eyes and told me I should have put a label on it if I didn't want anyone else to use it. I was fuming as I walked off to my room. I tossed and turned all night, thinking about how inconsiderate my housemates were. Then, in the middle of the night, an idea struck me. A label, huh? I'd give them a label, all right. The next morning, I got up early and found a blank sticker. In big, bold letters, I wrote urine and slapped it on my water jug. I put it back in the fridge and waited. Later that day, I came home to find one of my housemates staring into the fridge, a look of disgust on his face. He asked why there was a jug of urine in the fridge. I innocently told him it wasn't urine, just water with urine written on the side. When he asked why it was labeled that way, I explained it was to stop everyone from drinking it, but he was welcome to have some if he wanted. He looked confused and slightly grossed out, and declined, saying he was good. This scene repeated itself with every housemate, including the one who had been caught drinking straight from the jug. Each time I gave the same honest answer. The jug was clearly filled with water and lemon slices, but no one dared to touch it. My little experiment worked better than I could have imagined. Not only did my water remain untouched, but my housemates started buying their own drinks instead of mooching off others. The guy who had been caught drinking from the jug even apologized and offered to chip in for groceries. I'll never forget those years of struggling to make ends meet, and how a jug labeled urine became an unexpected symbol of boundaries in our chaotic student house. When I got this amazing job opportunity overseas, a 6-month contract that could really boost my career, I needed someone to house sit while I was gone. That's when I made the mistake of asking my childhood friend. We'd known each other since elementary school, but we'd grown apart over the years. Still, when I mentioned my situation, she jumped at the chance. Said she'd just gone through a bad breakup and needed a change of scenery. I thought, why not? She'd have a place to stay and I'd have someone to watch my house. Win-win, right? Wrong. The day before I left, I gave her a tour of the place. I showed her the kitchen and told her she could use anything she needed. I reminded her to water the plants on the windowsill every couple of days. She said she understood and commented on how cute the house was, saying I was lucky. I thanked her and told her I loved it there. Then I gave her the spare key, explaining it was for emergencies. She assured me she'd take good care of everything. If only I'd known what she meant by taking care of things. Fast forward 6 months. I'm jet-lagged but excited to be home. I pull up to my house and for a second, I think I'm on the wrong street. There's a for sale sign on the lawn, and it's not my name on it. I rush to the door, fumbling for my keys, but they don't work. The locks have been changed. I'm standing there confused and angry when she opens the door. She casually mentioned that I was back early. I told her I was right on time and asked what was going on and why my keys weren't working. She brushed off my concern and invited me inside, saying we needed to talk. I step inside and my jaw drops. My cozy, comfortable home has been transformed into something I barely recognize. The walls are a garish pink. My comfy couch has been replaced with some modern monstrosity. All my personal touches, photos, artwork, keepsakes are gone. I asked her what she had done to my house. She gushed about how fabulous it was, saying she'd always wanted a house like this and that it suited her much better than it ever suited me. I reminded her that this was my house and she was just supposed to house it. She dismissed my concerns, saying I didn't really need the place since I'd been gone for months. She claimed she'd made it her home now and that it was her style. I told her this was insane and that she needed to leave immediately. She refused, saying it was her house now and that she'd even put it up for sale. When I expressed shock at this, she explained that since she'd put so much work into it, she deserved to profit from it. I told her this was illegal and that she couldn't just take someone's house. She confidently said to watch her, claiming she'd already spoken to a lawyer. She said I had abandoned the place and she'd been living there, so she had rights now. I reminded her that I was on a work contract and she knew that. She dismissed this as mere details and said that the house was hers now. She threatened to sue me for emotional distress if I tried to kick her out. My childhood friend had turned into some kind of entitled monster. I called the police right then and there. She actually tried to sue me, claiming I'd gifted her the house. Thankfully, I had all the paperwork proving my ownership and our original agreement for her to house sit. She was evicted and was also charged with attempted theft, fraud, and destruction of property. Turns out she'd sold a bunch of my stuff too. The judge wasn't impressed with her "it's my style" defense. She ended up with a 2-year prison sentence and a hefty fine. I got my house back, but it took months to undo all her improvements and replace what she'd sold. I'm still piecing my life back together, but at least I can sleep in my own bed again, in a house that's truly mine, and you can bet I'll think twice before ever asking someone to house sit again.